Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My name is Adel Mozammel and welcome to the Muslim Education Show. আজকে আমাদের একটা interesting show হচ্ছে, and it's on a very personal matter that affects 1 in 3 families now in the UK, and that is the topic of divorce and the impact it has on children and education. And today আমার সাথে দুইটা guests এনেছি. One is Sister Fahima, who is a life coach and she is also an NLP practitioner, and also I have with me Farook, and he is a content creator and has a podcast called Disqualified Dads. And what I'd like to kind of begin with is have a discussion on what and why there is this real prevalence of divorce rates going up so much in the UK amongst Muslim families, because it wasn't like that for the generations that came. When they first came from Pakistan, Bangladesh, India, we had a lot more nuclear families. They stayed together, but this generation, there seems to be a alarming rate of divorce. And maybe if I start with you, Sister Fahima, and then on to you, Brother Farouk, to kind of give me an idea of why is it that divorce has become so prevalent in society today.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you for having me. I really do think it's multifaceted with regards to the reasons. I think the stigma is not so much there, even though in communities it exists. But I think in the UK, a lot more women are actually able to manage after divorce and actually going for divorce. And the system also makes it very easy for them to get divorced. I'm not endorsing it, but at the end of the day, I think that society has changed where even the tolerance level of our parents have now also diminished, where we are also taking these stances. And there are certain movements around and agendas, which I'm sure we'll get into, where women are following suit to sort of say that, you know, we can actually leave and be better off without a family and a relationship, and our kids will be fine and we'll be fine, just having that sort of mindset, because they've probably seen a few others. But again, what you see on, you know, the outside is so different to when it is on the inside. As I coach a lot of these women, even if they're really professionally successful, there is still a struggle. So that's what I want to raise when it comes to that, because even though they're going for it and it's happening, it's not that easy. And it's actually a lot harder for women as well to get into other relationships, and it doesn't mean it's going to be successful second time round. In fact, a lot of statistics say that after your first, the second and third is probably more likely to also go wrong as well, unless you've done the work, and a lot of people are not ready to do that or don't know how.
Okay, so you've kind of touched on a few issues there, and I'm going to touch and discuss that in a little moment. On to you, Brother Farouk.
I think, obviously, I'd have to agree with everything what Sister Fahima said, and also add to that, as time has gone on, and it's not just affecting the Muslim community, divorce is on the increase, initiated mainly, unfortunately, by sisters, cross communities and cross cultures. That's number one. I think the Muslim community is now fully penetrated this ideology into the Muslim community in the last 10 years, and it's now really taken off, I believe, in the last 5 years, where it's more and more prevalent. Now, I think, and also if you look at social media, last 10 years, I would say, if I've got my numbers right, social media has really taken off. Social media has also, when people put in pictures of their best life, they're living their best life, what people have, and I think also the ideology has been penetrated through social media, where people think, I can do better. Why should I tolerate this? Why do I need to be in this relationship? Where previous generations, their focus was maintain the family, create a base, create a foundation, let's build a family and a life. Their focus was slightly different. So I think with social media, and as also with the modern ideology of feminism, and the way the culture now after, so say immigrants have been here for 40, 50 years, for example, my dad's been here nearly 50 years. So from when he came to where we are now, we've managed to preserve obviously our deen and iman and culture and whatnot, but there's now a fusion and a mixture of culture. The gender wars are playing out in society and politics, which is now playing out in communities and households.
Okay, you speak about politics, you speak about feminism, and you speak about social media. What I find a little bit disturbing is that you don't speak about the women. Neither of you are here saying that, well, women have a right to be happy. They shouldn't be stuck in kitchens, and they shouldn't be stuck in unhappy marriages. Many women may have married young, and after 10 years, maybe their husbands haven't matured with them. They're out, they're doing all kinds of things, and they're expecting the women to carry all the load. And sometimes these women are thinking, well, do you know what? I could actually have a better life. Why should I accept this life of subordination? And it sounds to me from what you're both saying that, well, yes, you should.
It's not a life of subordination. I think when you see the other side of it, because I do coach a lot of women who actually are coming out of those so-called relationships which they feel that they were tolerating, and the other side is that the grass is not that greener for both men and women, and especially women. And a lot of women that I do coach, they actually would say, look, whatever's out there now, I'd rather even choose my ex and go back, if that was the case. And these are the women that are speaking for themselves. And these things are not heard. So I speak from the ground because I coach these women. I go through these journeys with them. And even if they were to shout to a certain extent of certain things that they weren't able to tolerate, right? I'm not talking extreme circumstances, but even in those extreme circumstances, I have had a few cases where they would even prefer to go back to that relationship than even have it what it is right now.
Are you suggesting then that often married women are ungrateful?
Absolutely not. I just think they just don't see the full picture, and they're always going onto the other side thinking that it will work. And it's like I said, it's men and women, but if women are doing that, they're finding it a lot harder to get into another relationship without having to figure out that, you know what, the past wasn't that bad. I could have made it work. I could have actually done more. I could have had more patience. Now my kids are actually suffering, and it's not worth the hassle.
Can I ask Farook Bhai here that, do you think that from what Sister Fahima is saying, is that essentially a lot of these women are regretting getting divorced, and they're seeing the outcome of what's happening because they're not finding good men out there? Could it not be argued that there is a lot of good men out there, but that they need to be looking further, or should they be maybe compromising? Because there's a lot of good men out there that are looking for marriage. Married, perhaps married. But then there's questions of polygamy here that could be opened up as well.
Okay, look, there's two ways to look at this now, yeah? Firstly, I will say, from the pool of women that are initiating divorce, who says there's women in there that are not working? Now, I'm sure you coach many women who have careers, who have jobs, and this idea they're chained to the kitchen sink, I think is a fantasy that doesn't exist. Now, like I said, career women and all sorts initiating divorce, right? So that right there is not happening. Secondly, what constitutes a good man now? There's so much confusion, there's so much out there on social media. Men themselves don't know what constitutes a good man. And a lot of these women that are initiating divorce, from what I've seen with all the fathers I speak to, there is this second generational trauma where they've come in with this ideology that I'm not going to be chained to the kitchen sink, hence I will rebel from the start before anything has actually happened. So when they've come in with this trauma, they're creating a scenario that doesn't exist, and they're rebelling against something that's not happened, which I believe is contributing to divorce because of how our parents came up, how the initial generations, they used to live big family together, all chipped in, and unfortunately women were, very active in the household in the domestic role. So because of, like I said, because of the time we're in now, so they've seen this growing up. So when they've come into their marriages, they've got this ideology that I don't want to end up like my mother, for example.
Right.
Or my dad was always struggling with money.
Right.
There's always money problems in the house. So because of this, because of the neurological pathways formed during the upbringing, this trauma, I believe, is being brought into marriages in our community, and that is what is causing a lot of marriage failures from what I've seen. And a good man, so again, also social media, what constitutes as a good man now? Is it someone that just prays 5 times the Mars? Someone that earns loads of money? Someone that helps chip in domestic? What is a good man now? Was my father a good man? Was he not? Do you see what I'm saying? How do you contextualize
I think that's a very important question, to identify what is a good man. And before we kind of delve into that further, I'd just like to remind all our viewers that the number should be below on the screen. Please do call in if you'd like to take part in this discussion. And we will be moving on to that, how the divorce actually impacts the children, and we'll be having a look at it from the educational perspective. But before that, আমরা যেটা চেষ্টা করছি is that to kind of understand that why does divorce take place, and if I could ask Sister Fahima, from your experience, at what ages is it that you see the majority of these breakdowns, and why is that?
Well, now, unfortunately, it's happening much early on. There's not much of a honeymoon period that even happens anymore. And some of them, majority of them, have been stuck in marriages, in unfulfilled, unhappy marriages for a long time, and now they're just wanting to do something about it. And when they come to me for coaching, and usually it's the women first, and when I talk through their issues, it's just, stuff that they can work out with their partners. And when I say to them, do you know what the other side of the coin will look like if you were to leave, and address it fully? And we go through the stages, and I take them through different techniques so that it's not just about the emotional fulfillment, because taking a step like that in divorce affects everybody.
Can I ask, what are the main complaints that you have from women?
That they just don't feel like they are loved. There's a lot of men that, in certain communities that, are very much, working hard as well. But at the same time, they might go out with their friends more. They might not spend time at home. There's not that quality. And
what's the expectation from a lot of these women? What is it that they expect from their husbands? That you're saying that the first one, I suppose you highlighted, is that they feel unloved.
Yeah.
And is it because, and as Brother Farook said, that a lot of the time the men are out working.
Yes.
And that because they could be that they're also expecting a certain lifestyle.
It could be that, but I think some of these women, especially the older ones, or sort of like, over 30s, mid-30s and onwards, they probably do not have the same life as their husband. If they're both working, you have to also think about this from a socio-economic background. If there are two people in the sort of family unit that are doctors and they are working and they have that mindset, they're more likely to be able to resolve certain things to a certain extent on the whole.
Amazing.
Right?
Can I just take a call?
Sure.
Assalamu alaikum, caller. How are you?
Hello.
Hello. Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam.
You're live. How are you? What's your name, sister? And what's your question?
My name's Sophie. What I want to ask the brother is, I understand the children are affected, but do they not think that the children are being affected when the husband and wife, and when the husband is being an abusive husband, when he is depriving the wife and his children by not giving them financially, not supporting them, and emotionally not supporting them, not giving them time?
Excellent question, Sister
Children are being
Sophie.
affected, and they're young, so not a lot of children can speak because they've got this monster in the house. They can't speak out. They're hiding, pretending this is not happening. I've seen this happen.
Yep.
With close friends, where the young children, they won't, when they can see their mother, because obviously every child is more close to their mother, when they can feel their mother's tension, that she's so tense that every time this man enters the house, they curl up into a little corner and pretend to play with their dollies or whatever they have, and just blank out what is happening. So sometimes it's better that those type of men leave the home. Leave.
Yep, absolutely, Sister Sophie.
For their children's sake.
I think you're right, because there's a lot of trauma that the child suffers because they're emotionally connected to the mother, and if she's living in fear, the children will also. And yet, I'll let kind of maybe Brother Farook Sister Fahima answer.
Look, I'll tackle this like this. Abuse is abuse regardless of who's doing it, whether it's the mother or the father.
Abuse.
Sorry?
Sorry, Sister Fahima, Sister Sophie, we missed you there.
What I'm saying is, it's not always physical abuse. I'm talking about emotional abuse.
Yeah, there's different levels of abuse. Absolutely, there's coercive control, financial abuse, religious abuse, verbal abuse, or even just that mental abuse of that fear. So we'll let kind of Brother Farook kind of deal with that. And Sister Fahima.
I can talk about this in detail. Firstly, look, abuse is abuse regardless of the perpetrator and the victim. We have to call it out and we have to deal with it regardless of who's doing it. Why is it genderized? Why are we genderizing abuse, number one, yeah? So if I sit here and just say, well, I've got a load of brothers that can tell you X, Y, and Z, this is not tackling the issue. This is not tackling the abuse.
Right.
Now, again, I could go down the street, I could get attacked by anyone, potentially. is the gender or the person that attacked me relevant in any way, shape, form possible?
Okay.
Now, for those, I speak to men who have been in relationships, especially from our community. The tactics used against them is coercive control.
But then people might say you're actually dismissing the fear and the intimidation that a lot of women are facing at home, because men, being physically stronger and being financial providers, can take and be abusive of their positions, and kind of flipping the script and saying, well, men and women both suffer abuse, may be argued isn't fair. I'll let Sister Fahima have a go at this.
Yeah, no, I completely understand that. And I think the reason why women do get annoyed when they hear certain things like this, because unfortunately they are the majority that will speak out about abuse, and they are the majority that probably is listed with regards to abuse. But then if you're talking about abuse, that is a separate matter. A lot of divorce is not just happening about abuse. A lot of the couples that come to me, you know, that's a separate issue, and there you can say whatever abuse you want to call it, that is fine. You can really call it out, like Brother Farook has mentioned. But we're talking about families that are breaking down for, you know, reasons that I know I have helped them through it and taken them through steps and stages for just changing their mindset, understanding certain things and talking it out, and having these sort of like, you know, relationship coaching and sort of couples coachings and things like that.
But where do you draw the line?
Of course, that's what I just said. If you have got that abuse and you cannot handle it, then that's why, you know, divorce is not haram.
But do you not think that women do not ever want to get divorced? They are pushed to it, and they only go and get divorced because there's no other choice, or the man has done it, because women have this stigma that they have to deal with being divorced in the Muslim community. It's much harder for them. So when
it depends. It depends.
If I can just ask Sister Sophie, is there anything else that you'd like to add?
Brother, what I want to ask is Brother Farook is, like, yes, he's put up a page that fathers don't have rights. But when you are in the marriage, do men not ever think, whether he divorced his wife or she divorced him, did you not think at the time what you are doing to your children, and, you know, and the effect you have put? And the thing is, the mother is the main person who's bringing up these children. You are mentally have abused her in whatever way you have. Do you not think that now she's bringing up your children, she's so mentally disturbed, that's going to affect the upbringing of your children? Like, I don't know if you've got daughters or sons, like, especially if you do have daughters, like, if that was your daughter, how would you feel? Like,
yep, okay, a great question. I'll let Brother Farouk
I
answer.
agree, and that's exactly why both parents should be present regardless of what happened between the adults. What has it got to do with the children? Why are the children suffering? That's a very good question, and I agree with it. Why are the children suffering?
Yeah, no, that's great. I think that's really important that you've touched on that. That it's not just...
but if you're screaming at each other in the house and those children are seeing that...
No, thank you so much, Sister Sophie, and I think that that's a great question. Inshallah, call it again and we'll definitely pick this up. But just, I think the points made that's really important is that it isn't and shouldn't just be one party.
Okay, let me just add to that. Okay, so let's say, for example, we talked about coercive control, so let's go into it. So if a sister is claiming coercive control, now anyone can make any allegation to anyone at any time, ultimately. So as a society and a community, before a third person gets involved to mediate or manage the situation, there has to be some threshold of evidence. The problem in our community is if a sister comes across crying and screaming, it's human nature for most men and most people around that situation to automatically assume this is the victim. This is the exact same tact used in the family court system, where a lot of brothers are losing contact with their children. And I agree, these children are being mentally disturbed because they are mourning a loss of a parent that they saw every day out the blue.
Absolutely.
So why is this being allowed? If these people are concerned about their children, why is there no talks of access? Why are brothers being forced through the family court?
And I think maybe the next caller will have something to add. Assalamu alaikum, caller. Assalamu alaikum.
Hello.
Hello, assalamu alaikum. What's your name and what's your question?
Hi, mate. My name's Singh and I'm from Liverpool.
How are you, Singh?
I'm okay, thank you. How are you?
Good, good. We're looking forward to your question.
Yeah, I just want to big up Farook for... Yeah, sorry. What I'm calling for is basically kind of big up Farook for everything he's doing for us fathers, because I'm in the same boat as him. And unfortunately, I've not seen my children for 19 months. My children were obviously in my life 1 minute and next minute they're gone.
So that's definitely very difficult for you, and you're right. Brother Farook is doing great work. Thank you for that. And it is, Sister Fahima, it is very true that a lot of fathers aren't getting to see their children for months and years on time. And I guess the question is you can argue that it's unfair for fathers and it's unfair for the children because there is a suffering, but as Sister Sophie said, that if it's the case that the father is a negative impact on the household and it's damaging the children and they in turn are happier and they're more successful in their schooling, in their education, in their mental health, then is it a good decision and was it right and appropriate for that father to be removed from their lives?
I think, you know what, we're all getting triggered because we're talking about personal situations where I deal with loads. And when I look at something, it's not just from one area. Like I said before when we were, interrupted with the another caller, was the fact that, different backgrounds, different social economic backgrounds deal with things differently. There are also different sort of like age groups where the youngsters may actually, exit that relationship unfairly as well without giving it the time. And we're not talking about abuse here. There are definitely abuse where it needs to be addressed, but then that too, a lot of the times, there is abuse between the parents, but it doesn't really filter to the children. So in the end, if you were to go into the courts, there is certain things put in place if both parties were fair enough to say you can still have access through, sort of like a centre or whatever, mediation. That's fine.
Can I ask you, Sister Fahima, before we go to break, we've got 2 minutes, that we've discussed the kind of abuse that men display, but what kind of abuses is it that women display if you say that it's on the other side?
I'm glad you say that because recently I've had an increase of clients, men in the Muslim community, of very high quality and professional and status, and they will never speak about it, and you'll never know by looking at their pages that they are going through abuse from their wives, physical, mental, and they will not hit back because at the end of the day, it's not because they are scared to, it's because they don't want to harm and hurt them, and they want to keep their family together, and they don't want to lose out on their children, and they are actually putting up with it. I know of cases right here, right now. Okay, obviously all my clients are private and confidential, but this is also now becoming prevalent.
Okay.
And we don't hear and we don't talk about that, and obviously men are not going to bring that up. So I'm a private coach, so people will trust me and they will come to me with those sort of scenarios, and I see it from the ground firsthand. And we can pick on one abuse and another abuse and that abuse and talk about it. I'm talking about it as a whole community. I have clients from across the globe, Muslim, non-Muslim, and I do see it from all perspectives. So when I'm speaking, I'm trying to be as fair as possible to say, yes, of course, when there's abuse, you have to take those steps if you are able to, because a lot of women and men are not actually able to even get out of that trap.
Okay. I think as we're coming up to our break, it's been quite a lively discussion in our first half. Just to kind of wrap up for our viewers at home, I think what would be interesting in our second half is to kind of move into the damage that it's doing for the children. What, from your experiences, have you heard has taken place where the schooling is involved? What are the rights for fathers and for mothers that are suffering from parental alienation? তো এটা আপনারা যারা শুনছেন ঘরে যে আমরা যেটা ডিসকাস করছি ডিভোর্সের ইম্প্যাক্ট কী হচ্ছে বাচ্চাদের উপরে, যে বাচ্চাদের স্কুলের সাথে মা বাপের যারা ডিভোর্সের ভিতরে যাচ্ছে ওদেরকে যে কীভাবে ওদের রাইটসটা কী হবে, যেটা ব্রেকে পরে এটা আমরা আরও ঘন ঘরে করে ডিসকাস করবো যে কী what is possible for them. And I think maybe after break আমরা যেটা ডিসকাস করতে চাই যে মহিলারা কীভাবে ওদের হাজবেন্ডদেরকে abuse করে or অত্যাচার করে. We'll have that discussion as well. So thank you very much, and inshallah we'll look forward to speaking to you soon. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back to this very special episode যখন we're talking about divorce and the impact on children and education. এখন আমরা প্রথম হাফে যেটা ডিসকাস করছিলাম যে ডিভোর্স কেন হয়, সোসাইটিতে কি হয়, অ্যান্ড এই হাফে আমরা যেটা ডিসকাস করব দ্য সাইকোলজি যে বাচ্চাদের ইম্প্যাক্টটা কী হয় অ্যান্ড ওয়াই দ্যাট psychological impact will affect them not only in school but as they're growing up. And one of the first things we want to talk about is with Brother Farook that he's mentioned that when a father is removed overnight by a non-molestation order or anything else and he has to leave the house, the devastating effect that has on the child. If you'd like to kind of expand on that.
See, let's talk from the children's perspective, because ultimately fathers can moan all day, they're fathers, they're grown men, it doesn't really matter, yeah? But these children are innocent. Now, a child has gone to school one day, it comes home, one parent has been ejected out the home overnight. In a children's world, he doesn't know where that parent is, when they're coming, maybe they can't even ask about him, who knows? So they're carrying that anxiety and burden. Now, when an adult goes through this, they're mourning that loss for that child that's alive. Grown men give up work, they break down, they can't continue to function. So this child who doesn't understand this emotion, can't articulate it, doesn't know why it's hurting, one of the most important persons in their life has disappeared overnight. And then they might start wondering, what if I lose the other person? What if I go to school, come back, and the other parents disappear?
So are you suggesting that the child will start feeling insecure and unsafe as a result of this?
Well, the child's mourning a loss. So
Right.
imagine a death in the family. A child, it can't understand those feelings. So those feelings, they can't be expressed. They are internalized. That is causing internal damage. How do we measure that? It's hard to say. But all the studies, statistics across various organizations have shown children from a single parent home do not do as well as children that have access to both parents.
Okay, let me ask you, Sister Fahima, that if a child is feeling the loss or mourning the loss of a parent, and a lot of the time it is the fathers, what is happening and what are the mothers doing in this instance to that child to, I imagine, make them feel better? But what is happening and how does that affect the psychology of the child?
It does depend on the certain ages. A lot of the 0 to 5, they may not understand, but they have that lingering. And obviously, when they are children developing at that age, their neural functions and a lot of the development in their brain is still happening. So if you're going to add stress to that, if you're going to add anxiety to that, then, there can be permanent damage and impairment to cognitive sort of like behavior.
What does that look like? What does the permanent damage look like? And how does that affect them in society, in schools?
Well, it's a lot of to do with behavioral sort of like issues as well. Like boys most naturally will tend to be more aggressive. Girls will probably be a little bit more, enclosed, emotional. I've dealt with a lot of young girls, especially there's quite a prevalence of self-harm amongst teenage girls, and a lot of that is to do with family issues as well, or relationships in general.
Can I ask, what do the mums do when this father has been ejected, as you said? How do the mums compensate for that, and how do they explain the absence to the
Obviously, we are generalizing here, and if it's a bad relationship and if the mom is resentful and hurtful, then she will badmouth that father, thinking that it's actually helping the child to understand when actually it's causing more damage. Because no matter what the relationship between the two parents are, that child still has love for both. Even if it is, as much many people say that, they see the screaming parents, whatever. Every child wants to see their family together, even if they see that.
Right.
They don't want it to split. They want them to fix it. And they want them to bring back together. Even in those extremes.
The child wants this.
That's what I'm saying. Yes, the child still wants their parents to get better and come back together. Obviously, when they're adolescents and they see these things happening, then they may take a side without even the parents' intervention when it comes to looking at extreme circumstances like abuse. But at the same time, when there is a relationship between the parents and the child and automatically it disappears, it's definitely going to have an effect on them in many ways.
What does it do to the child if, for example, I understand from conversations with both of you and others that a lot of the time the parent that is still in the child's life is, if the child is of age, is unloading their emotional trauma and using the child as almost like a crutch
Yes.
to make themselves feel better.
Yeah, it's so unfair to the child because it's a burden on them to hear that not just they're missing one parent, but they feel guilty for even loving the missing parent because you've got the mother there that's probably crying, moaning, and even if it's not direct, they're speaking loud on the phone to their friends, to their mothers, to their sisters, complaining about that one that's gone and shut the door.
What advice would you give those mothers?
I would say seriously, you need to sort it out because it's really damaging to those future relationships that your children are going to have. And you might be able to move on in a relationship, but they are damaging. You know, their neurotransmitters, the chemicals that are in their brain, their development is being impaired. So many different things is happening to a child's mind biologically and psychologically that they have absolutely no concept about it.
Now, we've seen in schools across the country that where children are coming from single-parent homes, that they can, and it's not all the time, there is cases where they're underperforming in
Yes.
schools.
Right.
But it's not because of a lack of academic ability. It's actually because of the additional emotional trauma and responsibility that they're taking on. So when they're going home, they're having to nurture, they're having to support mum, and they have this internal conflict that's going on, and the only safe space they have is actually in school. When they go to school, they can be children, because when they're at home,
Yes.
they're could I say...
Or they sometimes mimic what happens at home. And sometimes if they were in abusive relationships, they can be bullies themselves, and we know that. Or if they are, you know, the providers or taking care of their mom emotionally, then sometimes at school, they can be quite withdrawn because they're drained from it. And that's when they underperform and they're physically, mentally tired. So you see, a mother sometimes, you know, they should not rely and speak. They still need to be that mother for that child. It shouldn't be, the role should not be reversed, nor do they need to use that as an outlet. They need to go outside and seek the
Sometimes
help.
I think what it is for a lot of women, they don't want to be and see themselves as victims. And they want to soldier on. And because after their divorce, after whatever horrific abuses they've gone through, they still have to work.
Yeah.
They still have to
It's
earn.
a lot of pressure.
There's a lot of pressure for them, right? And they have this child they have to look after, or these children they have to look after. And they don't, and you know, unfortunately, counselling isn't always available freely. So they're stuck, and they only have their sisters and their friends to
Yes.
talk to, because it's a form of therapy for them.
Yes.
And it's very difficult to juggle, and I think they don't do it intentionally, perhaps.
No, they don't. But at the same time, we are living in a world right now where we cannot sort of excuse ourselves for information. When we want to look for something, we will look for something. And these mothers that do sometimes complain about their time, but when it's a wedding, they're up and running to go, right? So I question that as well. Because I think to myself, when you have an urgency to do something and you have to pick yourself up and get yourself, you know, to have knowledge, whether it's on the internet, whether it's on YouTube, whether it's
for
anything,
work.
yes, you will do it
Are
and
you
you will
suggesting
make
that
it.
there's an element of either avoidance or not
Ignorance.
taking that ignorance, or not taking responsibility, perhaps?
Yeah, because a lot of the times it's about blaming the other and not looking within. In life, even if it's another person's fault, as we know in the Quran, Surah Ra'id, no situation is going to change unless you change the situation within yourself. And women hate me saying that because, like, well, they're the ones that did wrong. Why do I have to change? I'm like, if you see those changes within you, it's not about blame here. You will see it's a filter effect. And we don't understand the psychology of ourselves and how the world works and self-development. And I know that it took me to go through my divorce, personally I'm speaking as well, for me to go through that. And you're absolutely right when it comes to, you know, children, majority of the time may have that kind of, you know, I don't know, that sort of lack of education. But when you have someone who is working hard to change themselves and to improve and to bring that father and still make them involved because you know that's what your child needs, you'll see how they flourish. And I'm living proof of that.
Okay, well, firstly, that's brilliant. But before we kind of delve into that, I want to bring Brother Farook on this matter. Just on, and the topic I want to ask is that a lot of times, I know that you talk about a lot of fathers, but just taking a woman's perspective for a second, for a woman, especially from the South Asian Muslim community, they have, and even, sorry, not even from a South Asian Muslim community, but even for women in general, their hearts get broken. And a divorce with someone that they loved and they've been abused as a result of it, their hearts are smashed into 1,000 different pieces.
Absolutely.
And to pick each part up and heal from all of every single hurt that was caused by their previous partner is replayed over and over again. And to do that, to forgive that, is a very difficult journey. How do you...
Okay, I could tackle that straight away now, yeah? So again, we have genderized this. At the start of this conversation with Sister Fahima and all the research that's gone behind it, sisters are initiating divorce cross-community, cross-cultures. The heartbreak in 90% of cases is the brothers, unfortunately. That's the fact. So I understand the sisters that were given a talaq to and they're heartbroken that didn't want it, but sisters are initiating that divorce. So we can say they're heartbroken, but they initiated the divorce. Ultimately, that comes with consequences. There are brothers that are also heartbroken, but they're willing to move on and accept that. But after the heartbreak of the marriage failing, losing their life partner, someone they potentially love, they've got the added heartbreak of every single child they've lost contact with. So I would say healing needs to happen to anyone who's had a heartbroken, regardless of gender.
Right.
But it seems to be after the heartbreak, father's heart is broken by the use of the system.
Right.
And so to say sisters have a lot of support. The government, the way the system and the framework in the society we live in is set up is to ensure sisters have enough support there.
Okay.
I don't know if I can talk about this, but 10 brothers a day from other communities are choosing not to carry on post-separation.
What do you mean by not
They
choosing to
decide to end their lives post-separation amongst other communities. Now, brothers from our community have thought about this. Every brother I speak to has thought about ending it.
I feel there's quite an emotional... I can see you're getting quite emotional on this, so just...
Yeah, sorry, yes. Yeah, so what I'm saying is, those brothers that don't do it is because we have Islam. They're saying this is a big sin for us, so hence we don't engage in this. But are we going to wait till something like that happens, till someone buries a son before we acknowledge the issue? Now, heartbreak is heartbreak, but ultimately the support is there for one gender, the gender that is initiating the divorce. Now, this is not me being biased. This is the facts that are out there based on statistics. It is, and correct me if I'm wrong, I do understand that the legal aid now, or that if a woman has suffered from domestic violence, whether it's financial, religious, coercive control, she automatically is entitled for legal aid. Now, I understand that men are also entitled for that, but a lot of men, even if they have suffered domestic violence, are reluctant to come out in the open and say this.
Of course they are, because our communities, and firstly, they won't believe it. And again, it's like, well, you're the man. You should be able to control and take in that sort of responsibility. And there's so many variations to that.
But
and
then
also,
if they do control, then they're domestically violent.
Exactly.
But, right, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, that's what you're saying, that they can't, it's almost like they're trapped. Is that what you're suggesting?
The coercive control laws, what people don't realise, are only applied in the family courts to women. So coercive control, let me tell you, put it in context for you. So we keep throwing this word abuse around. The abuse, it seems to be the trump card to cover anything. Father shouldn't be around because he was abusive, he raised his voice, he didn't pay. Coercive control can mean you agreed with your wife 10 years ago on the colour of the paint that you chose that day. That's in the family courts, in the system, in order to secure legal aid, that is classed as abuse. If that is the threshold of abuse, then unfortunately, I think most of the Muslim South Asian community should be locked up.
Right. Well, I don't know if I'm going to go down.
I'll go say,
putting all the Muslims in.
If that's the threshold of abuse, I think all men would be locked up. Anyone who's been involved in a relationship in their life should be locked up at some point. I think one of the things that maybe I think you're very forcefully putting forward the point of view from the fathers, and I think I understand that. I think we
seem to be mitigating a lot of the suffering that a lot of the mothers are going through. And a lot of the time, it is the mothers that are spending 90% of the time with the children. And they are very, very active in thinking about their education, thinking about their madrasa, what clubs they're going to go to, what friends they have. And a lot of the time, fathers are absent from a lot of this.
Yes.
And the argument you can provide, well, they're out working, but also, they're also out chilling with their friends because they don't really want to deal with the drama of what's happening at home, and they believe that as long as I'm putting food on the table and there's a roof overhead, the bills are paid, I'm paying for everything, why are you complaining? This does happen.
That's a big generalisation.
I mean, we're working with generalisations here as well, though,
but
right?
that's a very big generalisation. So look, ultimately, sorry, can I
That's
take
no,
this
it's
one for a
fine.
second, yeah? So all the relationships that I've ever seen and know throughout my lifetime, father's the one who wrestles with the kids, the rough and tumble, the rough play. Fathers teach them how to ride their first bike. They go to the park, they kick their first football. Fathers have this interaction with the child. To assume that fathers spend no time with the child after work or in between, I think that is, like I said, we can't generalise that statement.
But that would be a common complaint.
No, but that's, okay, that can be a complaint, but fathers bring, so if the mother's bringing the academic side, checking on education, this and that, the life skill the father still brings, the presence of the father in
Are
itself.
you saying that while the mother is dealing with the education, the academic, the friend circle, the socials, the picking up, the bullying, if there is any, and all of these other things is balanced by the father coming and having a little play and being a fun time dad?
No, I disagree. Fathers should do drop-offs, pick-ups, get involved.
But
In
a lot of the time they're not.
Okay, I agree. And in a lot of cases with a lot of fathers that I have spoken to, they weren't allowed to. Because if you control the bond with the child, you control the relationship.
I see you nodding there.
A lot of fathers I know that...
Well, there is to a certain extent control, sort of the truth there, because a lot of mothers want the help, but when they do also get the help, if it's not done their way, then they don't want to do it that way.
But then fathers should fix up, shouldn't they? They should
absolutely,
perform better.
they should fix up. And I know what you're saying about, there's a balance and things like that. But, when it comes to, a figure in the house, it's not about the balance. It's about what that brings in a household. And even Islamically, we know that a presence of someone, standing there and just being part of it, as much as it should be kind of balanced and fair, that is enough for a child to just know that this is my father. Even if they don't have a relationship, I know loads of especially boys and girls, they'd be proud to say, oh, well, this is my father now coming today. And and the mum's like, I'm there every single day, but they're just happy to see their dad. Okay, so these things do happen. And you have to also understand it from a child's perspective. It's not about what the mother feels that, there's not an equal amount of work there that's going on. That presence makes a huge difference to the child.
Can I comment? Okay, I can understand from both of your perspectives that what you're saying is that the presence of the father, even if he just does a little bit of rough and tumble, is great. Fine. That's not good enough for a wife, though, is it?
No, of course not. But then that's a separate issue. And that's something that needs to be dealt with.
But here's the thing, right? Is that if the father is, as you said, is not really living up to the mother's standards, surely, as you've referenced Islamically, that it's his responsibility to be living up to the expectations of his wife, because if he knows that all she wants is the best for the children, then why is he not living up to her standards?
Well, a lot of these times, and they're not even communicated in that way. It's meant to be assumed. A lot of the times, women have an expectation which is not actually been said, and they don't have a conversation about what is needed but what is not there.
But surely it's the man's responsibility to pick up the silent cues, because if she
not everyone is skilled in that way. Not everyone knows these things. And talking as a woman, at the end of the day, when I say I'm fine, doesn't mean that I'm fine, but you're going to believe it as a man a lot of the times. And if you know them very well, sometimes, you just don't want to cause an argument, so you just kind of leave it. And it's the silence and it's the loneliness of, having that over time, and people say counselling doesn't work, is because you've left it so late that when you first were tolerating, you didn't see to those things where you still have love and mercy. And now there's resentment, hate and anger, and you're going to a counsellor as a last sort of resolution, and that's where it may not actually work.
Look, unfortunately, it should be very clear to a man, if there is a deathly silence in the house, that there's a problem. Now, if you're arguing that, well,
they just want
maybe
peace then.
well, if you're saying that a man cannot recognize that she is silent, she is giving a different vibe towards him, then it would be, you're suggesting that men are incapable of understanding emotions, and I don't think that's
I think
true.
a lot of them are very much lacking in emotional intelligence, by the way. Whether it's deliberate or whether it's not, and it is a skill.
Are you
to be
saying
a
that
parent.
women lack emotional intelligence?
No,
Sorry.
men.
You're saying men lack emotional intelligence?
Yeah.
What do you think about this, Farook?
I think I'll just turn the whole thing on its head. I think there's a lot of sisters that don't understand men. We keep assuming the man should, again, be at home pandering to these silent cues and X, Y, and Z. Each individual and each relationship should think, what did I do? What am I not doing?
both, yeah.
Why is this man not responding? Men respond to certain things and emotions that...
Do you know what's really interesting in this conversation is no matter how hard we try, it's the children that are getting lost in all of this.
Yeah.
Yes.
And what this tells us is how important it is for the communication between the husbands and the wives to take place.
100%.
Because if they are not communicating and they are not discussing, and look, I take your point that a lot of times women have to almost grin and bear that, well, do you know what? He was my choice. It might have been however long ago, I chose him, and the grass is not greener on the other side. It is rough out there, and I have heard horror stories.
Yeah.
And I take that on board, and I think the solution to that, if you have children, is before chucking the baby out with the bathwater, give it a go.
Yes.
If you need to go on a vacation, go on a vacation. If you need to go on a marriage retreat, go on a retreat.
Yes.
If you need to go on counselling, go on for counselling. I think one of the things that I heard recently, and if you can just give a final comment on this, is that both men and women have vessels. And the man's vessel requires respect. And the woman's vessel requires love. And if you take away the respect from a man, he will start taking the love away from a woman.
Yes.
And therein is a real solution to giving love and giving respect, and how you find that balance. And আমাদের সময় খুব কম আছে, তো we'll just have to complete with Sister Fahima and then Brother Farook, inshallah.
I think we need to be more spiritual beings, and when we have these kind of issues, I think we need to look at some of our role models of Khadija alayhi salam. Even though she was a businesswoman, her family was priority. Fatima, alayhi salam, and Sayyidah Zainab, and Asiya, who was, the Pharaoh's wife, things like that. I think we need to be spiritual. The closer and high value women today, the actual definition of that is you having faith, iman.
Amazing.
And you connecting further and further to serve Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I think with that, inshallah, you will find the solutions.
Amazing. And we've got a few more seconds.
Yeah, I'll just keep it very simple. If you respect your husband, you just give him that respect. He's not interested in he will agree with 100 things. Just show him a little bit of respect, give him that place, and he will put you on a pedestal.
MashaAllah, Jazakallah khair to both of you. It's been a very lively discussion. It's been a very lively show. And I'm very pleased that you've all joined us from home. I'm sorry we couldn't take all the calls that came in today. I'd like to thank Sister Fahima, and I'd like to thank Brother Farook. And I hope, inshallah, that we are able to continue this discussion, inshallah, with the studio audience next time. And for today, I'd like to wish you all a very peaceful evening, and assalamu alaikum